Hello, third grade. So we are learning more about ecosystems today. We're learning all about plants and animals and how they interact with each other. We're learning about environments and how they support the plants and animals. So today we're going to talk about different types of organisms. So the first thing we're going to do is just a review from last year. So you should already know these, but we're going to take notes about them anyway, just to remind our brains. So the first organism that we're going to talk about are animals that eat mainly plants. Do you remember what that's called? So these are giraffes. They eat leaves, right? Or other plants. So animals that eat mainly plants. Do you remember what it's called? Herbivores. Very good. So an herbivore, you remember you don't pronounce the H, it's kind of silent. An herbivore is an animal that eats mostly plants or mainly plants. All right, good job. Next, we have meat eaters or animals that eat other animals. Do you know what that's called? That is called a carnivore. So carnivores are meat eaters or animals that eat other animals. And this is only meat, right? Only other animals. Now we have one that's kind of in the middle of these two things. This type of animal, eats both plants and meat. Do you remember what that's called? An omnivore. Good job. So we have omnivores, herbivores, and carnivores. We classify animals in these three words based off of their diet or based off of what they eat. That is all that this is based off of, what they eat. And I do think that this is review from second grade, but if you're learning this for the first time, that's okay. So we are going to take notes over this. So get out your science journal. We're going to write classifying animals. Now, classify is a fancy word for grouping. So we classified shapes in geometry, in math. We classified them based off of characteristics about them. We classified them into quadrilaterals or rectangles, triangles, polygons, parallelograms. Classifying is just sorting or grouping things. So now we're classifying or grouping or sorting animals. Today's date is 3/26/21. So the first type of animal that we're going to write is an herbivore. Herbivores are animals that eat mostly plants. Some of you guys are herbivores. Some of you are vegetarian. You don't eat meat. That makes you an herbivore because you eat mostly plants. You can also draw a picture. I'm going to draw a leaf, or maybe two leaves. To remind me, I'm going to label it leaves. Animals that eat mostly plants are called herbivores. All right, next, pause the video if you need to. I'm going to put omnivores in the middle because they're kind of both. So I'm going to write omnivore. Are animals that eat both plants and meat. So I'm going to draw a leaf again, because these animals eat plants. And I'm going to draw a fish, because a fish is meat, but it's also easy to draw. So I'm going to write leaf and then fish. So we have herbivores, we have omnivores. Pause the video if you need to. I'm going to keep going. Last, we have carnivores. And carnivores are animals that eat other animals. This time, I'm going to draw a big fish. He is eating this little fish. Fish eating fish. All right, so theirs are ways to classify animals based off of their diet. We have herbivores, omnivores, carnivores. Now, if you have room on this page, you can keep writing on this page. We're gonna draw a line. And if you still have room, we're gonna write 3 different types of animals. I mean, not animals. We're gonna write 3 different types of organisms. So if you have room, you can keep writing on this page. My notebook is really small, so I'm going to turn the page. Pause it if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to turn the page. On this page, or if you drew a line, under your line, we're going to write classifying organisms. And I'll write the date again. So, what changed? Before I wrote classifying organisms, before I wrote classifying animals, this time I wrote classifying organisms. So an organism is any living thing, right? It includes animals, but what else does it include? It also includes plants. We didn't talk about plants on our last page, but we're going to talk about them on this page. So, before we classified animals based off of their diet or what they eat, this time we're going to classify organisms based off of their role in their environment, like their job, what they do in their environment, how they get energy. All right. So, the first word that we're going to learn is called a producer. Plants are producers because they use sunlight to produce or make their own food. Produce means to make. You can produce candy. You can produce brownies. You can produce cars. You make. So a producer makes their own food. Plants get their food from where? They make their food from the sun. So they use the sun to help make their own food. So if you have room on your page, well, all right. So we're going to write producers. We're going to write organisms that make their own food. Now, I'm going to write all of mine over here and draw my picture over here. So you can either copy me or just do it all the way across and draw your picture below. Organisms that make their own food. I'm going to draw a picture over here. Here's my grass. I'm going to draw a producer. Now, I'm really good at drawing flowers. Well, not really good, but I know how to draw a flower. So I'm going to draw a flower. So this flower makes its own food from the sun. It uses the sun's energy in what's called photosynthesis to make its own energy. I'm going to write energy right here. Now, you don't have to draw a flower. You can draw a tree. You can draw a bush. But it makes its own energy from the sun. So I'm going to label this sun, and I'm going to label this plant. So plants are producers. They both start with P. A producer produces or makes their own energy. So the energy from the sun goes to the plant. Plants are producers because they use sunlight to produce or make their own food. Now, it's not food like you and I do, like, or animals do, like they don't eat their food, right? They don't have a mouth. They don't chomp on their food and then goes to their stomach. No, they make their own food, meaning that like they make their own energy based off of energy from the sun. All right, pause this video if you need to, because we're going to move on. So then, where does that energy go? Well, who eats producers? A consumer eats producers. A consumer is an animal. Animals are consumers. Consumers need to consume or eat plants and animals to get their food or energy. Consumers cannot make their own energy like producers can. Consumers consume their energy. Consume is a fancy word for eat. I like to consume pizza. I like to consume chocolate. What do you like to consume? So consume, a consumer eats food to get energy. So we're going to write consumer. We're going to write organisms that eat food. Then I'm going to write plants or animals. Organisms that eat food to get energy. Now, producers are only plants. You can even write plants. Consumers are only animals. Producers and consumers. So we're going to draw another picture. So I still have my grass here. Still going to draw the sun. It's going to be a lot smaller this time though. And I'm going to draw a plant. But this time, I'm going to draw an animal eating a plant. Okay, I don't know how good this is going to be, so bear with me. I'm going to draw his head. He's eating the plant. I guess it's a horse. We drew a horse because they had horses over here. He's got a tail. He's got an eyeball. Okay, so there's my horse. Kind of looks like a dog. Whatever. Horse, sun, plant. So then the energy goes from the sun to the plant. And then the horse eats the plant and he gets energy. Without food, you would have no energy. I know when I don't eat food, I get really crabby because I don't have a lot of energy. And then Cole, my husband, says, Mr. Schroyer, you need to eat some food. So we need to eat to get energy. We cannot make our own energy from the sun like producers can. Pause this video if you need to. So we have producers that make their own food or produce their own food. We have consumers that eat their food or consume their food to make energy. I'm going to actually add to this. I'm going to write energy over here. If you have room, please add it. If you don't, that's okay. Producers, organisms that make their own food and energy. Consumers are organisms that eat food to get energy. Next, well, what else is there, Mrs. Schroyer? Next, and finally, we have a decomposer. Say decomposer. So we know this word, decompose. We decomposed the numbers in math. So we composed numbers, we built them, and then we decomposed and we broke them down. So a decomposer is an animal that breaks down dead matter to return nutrients back to the soil. So decomposers are animals that break down dead matter. Ew. Sounds pretty gross, doesn't it? But that's how the soil gets its nutrients. And that's how things break down. So we're going to add that to our list. So a decomposer is an animal. I'm going to write organism. Is an organism. Organisms that break down dead matter to make nutrients. We're just going to make to make nutrients. So, this is a snail. Isn't he cute? So, the snail is a decomposer. So, snails have to get energy, right? So they have to consume. They're consumers and they're decomposers. But this snail also, he's a decomposer because he breaks down dead matter to return nutrients back to the soil. So I'm going to draw my ground a little bit higher. I'm going to draw a plant. I'm going to draw the sun. I'm going to draw the plant's roots down here, showing that this is soil. And I'm going to draw little teeny tiny specks to stand for my nutrients. So organisms that break down dead matter. So I'm going to draw some dead leaves from this flower. Because once the leaves fall off, they're no longer living. And I'm going to draw a snail. He's going to be bigger than he is in real life. That's okay. I'm going to write a snail. He's going to eat these leaves and break them down and poop them out. Ew. To make nutrients for the soil. There are other decomposers. Other decomposers are like worms. Insects. Fungi. So we learned that word last week a little bit. A fungi could be like a mushroom. I'm gonna draw a mushroom. Have you ever seen a mushroom? They also break down nutrients, are also decomposers. All right, there are our notes. So we reviewed herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. And then we learned about producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers produce their own food to make energy. Consumers consume their food to make energy. And decomposers break down dead matter to return nutrients to the soil. I want you to look in your science packet and get this page out. It says living things. It says producers, consumers, decomposers. Pause the video if you need to go get those things. Okay, so producers are things that produce their own food. We're going to write examples. So one example is a tree. We're going to write trees. Trees are producers. They make their own energy from the sun. What's another example of a producer? Maybe a flower. Flowers. Let's think what else. We could also say a cactus. Consumers. We have an example right here. A snake. A snake is a consumer. What else? Maybe beavers. I'm just listing things that consume. And I'm gonna write humans, because we're consumers. Now, decomposers. Our example right here, this is a mushroom. We have worms. And some insects. You can color these pictures if you'd like to. I want you to fold this and glue it in your science journal. Then you have a brain pop to watch and you have an activity to do. All right. Thank you, third grade. Great job.